geração da história a crescer com telefone e celular, a ter perfis nas redes sociais antes de chegar à idade adulta e a não saber como é o mundo sem internet. Também uma geração que sofre com ansiedade como nunca e que tem seus corpos expostos em rede mundial, muitas vezes sem filtro. E também a primeira a lidar muito cedo com temas como anorexia e até mesmo suicídio. Ao mesmo tempo, uma geração empática que quer melhorar esse mundo caótico que herdou e também quer romper paradigmas. A geração Z é tudo isso e muito mais. E é exatamente essa geração que a documentarista britânica Liz Smith investiga e retrata em Geração Z. Além de ouvir os próprios jovens, ela entrevista de psicólogos a especialistas em tecnologia, que analisam como a revolução digital está impactando nossa sociedade, além de nosso cérebro e nossa saúde mental. E ela também retrata como as forças que impulsionam essa revolução estão trabalhando contra a humanidade e nos colocam em uma trajetória perigosa. E quem encara os maiores perigos e desafios são justamente os adolescentes e jovens adultos que nasceram de meados da década de 90 até 2010. Conversamos com Liz, que viveu e trabalhou no início dessa revolução tecnológica e que também imaginou um mundo melhor e diferente. E ela começou contando como essa experiência foi tão crucial no momento de fazer a escolha de realizar esse documentário.
You know, when you make independent documentaries, you've got to really be passionate about the subject matter because it's quite hard graft to get these made, right? And back in 1997, I joined what was then a little American startup company, which was called Yahoo, which we know, I mean, it's kind of started to disappear now, but in the days, it was one of the leading Silicon Valley internet companies. And it was a truly amazing experience and a very positive experience too. And it was full of wonderful people, very well-intentioned people, a whole big group of misfits, actually. I probably include myself in that categorization. And you know, we really thought that we were building something revolutionary, something different, but something positive, something that was going to be a democratizing force, open up, reduce barriers, open up communication, level the playing field, and so forth. And it was super interesting when I look back 20 years later. And I've been a filmmaker since I left there in 2002 and went to film school. So I've been a filmmaker for a lot longer than I was doing that world. But when I look back sort of 20 years later, and look back at what we created, I was like, oh, wow. It's a bit like a sort of Frankenstein monster thing. And that was what inspired me to then go, this is what I want to make a documentary about. But I didn't get to, at that point, it was just generally how it was affecting all of us, all generations. And I'm just super fascinated about human psychology, what makes us tick. And those are, my subjects are always in that kind of area. And then I read a book by Jean Twenge called iGen. And that was a penny drop moment because she pointed out that Gen Z are the first generation to have mobile internet in their pockets 24/7. And that was the game changer, I think. And so at that point, I started exploring Gen Z. And I have to confess, at that point, I didn't even appreciate there was a difference between Gen Z and millennials. So I was on a learning curve too. And that gave the film a great focus and thus began my journey.
I really like the way you make clear that this generation is the most empathic generation, generals, they have a sense of justice, and they really teach us a lot about this. But at the same time, we don't know how to cope with them because they are still discovering the word, and the word has changed so much, isn't it? And for them, I think it's even more difficult than to millennials or xennials like me, or baby boomers.
One of the things that came out in the making of the film, I said, they're very self-aware. They're very aware of the situation they're in. It's not like they're going through it sort of like zombies. They're often depicted as being sort of these screen-obsessed sort of young people who just, if they could get off their phones, but they're kind of aware of the conflict that they have. But the thing is, there's kind of no way out of it. It's so ingrained in their lives. It's A, what they've already always known. And B, it's so much part of our lives now anyway that you can't just switch it off because we saw with, taking to an extreme, but we saw with COVID and stuff, screens became essential. Your schooling was done through screens. You had to have your vaccine passports on your phone, or you have to, everything's done on a smartphone now. And of course, all your network and your friends' network are there. And there's some huge positives about it too. So you wouldn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater anyway. But it's really complex to navigate your life in this digital world now. And they're aware of the complexities of that. And but it doesn't make it any easier. And then I think the most fascinating piece of this is the person we present online is often very different to the one in real life. And as one of our experts says, when you have a big difference between the online persona and the real persona, you start to get into all sorts of mental health issues and problems. And I think particularly for the younger generations who haven't known any different, that line between your public persona and your private persona gets very blurred very quickly. And that can be challenging when you're trying to sort of understand who you are. And, growing up and being a teenager and being in your 20s, it's all about finding your identity, isn't it? And those two things get very mixed easily. And, you have to be quite intentional about your online persona. But it's quite hard to keep that gap, keep those two things, the private and the personal, the private and the public, as two different things now. They definitely have crossed over.
To our generation, we didn't talk about suicide. It was just a taboo. And this generation, before we realize, they are already talking about suicide. They are dealing with it.
There's so much talk about it on social media. And, there's almost this normalization thing that's going on. And we touch on that in the movie, which, is great in some respects. It's fantastic that they're talking about it. And it's, some of the stigmas dropping. But also the normalization side of it is terrifying. And I didn't even know what self-harm was when I was growing up. And, now everybody knows what that is. And you just wonder if you're seeing that, how much that's actually going to potentially influence you to do that yourself. So it's a good thing it's being spoken about, but it's also, slightly concerning too, that it's so much there. And what I found very worrying was when I was doing the research for the film, and getting all the TikTok videos that would represent the various points. What I did is I would go on TikTok every morning. I sort of set myself up, pretended I was a 15-year-old girl living in the UK, and what would I be looking at? And very, very quickly, the algorithm on the For You page just started throwing up the same content. And a lot of it was to do with eating disorders, body image, body beautiful. All of the girls, it was mainly girls that were being shown on my algorithm, looked the same. There was a homogeneity that was coming through. And I really felt that, that also was creating some of this normalization effect. Now, somebody else would have a very, very different feed. If they're really into horses or whatever, they might end up on horses TikTok, and it's all about that. But it was frightening how quickly mine turned into that. And I thought, oh gosh, when I was 15, 16, older than that, I think I would have really struggled. How you look on video has become more important than how you look in real life, which is fascinating too. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. We became all avatars,
Exactly. And as we start to move into the metaverse now, the whole avatar thing is becoming more and more a part of life.
How do you feel about it? Like we all became like consuming, products.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the key differentials between TV and the digital era now. And it's that, before when we were watching TV, yes, we had commercials thrown at us, but it was a passive experience. Now we're creating the content. So we think, oh, we've got all these wonderful services for free, but actually they're not free. You have to create all of this content yourself. And so you're actually fueling these big industries, these tech industries with the content you're making. And when you, when you're on TikTok or some of the other platforms, some of the content that's made is brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. And yet it's just given away for free. And as the bar rises, the content has to be better and better and better all the time, because those are the ones that get seen, and you want your likes and your clicks. And, if you're an influencer, you need that if you're going to make your living through that. So the quality of this content is fantastic, but no one's getting paid for it.
And this social media, fake news, it's something that, puts democracy in danger, isn't it?
100%. Yeah. I mean, the next film I'm making is about the battle between the populists and the progressives. We've started doing a bit of filming already. And one of the first places we filmed was in the Philippines recently, where the elections were there. And Bongbong Marcos, the son of the former dictator there, which was a brutal era, he's just gone through with a landslide victory. And it's quite extraordinary that that's happened. And one of the big driving forces behind that has just been the social media, digital media kind of push, and this revisionist history that they've been able to create through it by recasting the age of the dictatorship as a golden era, which is absolutely extraordinary. And you look at why did that happen, and you realize that a lot of that was to do with just the manipulation that you have of information through social media.
Have you shown the film to Generation Z?
It was I was super scared the first time I showed it to Gen Z, actually. Because I intended it for an older audience. I did intend it for sort of parents, educators, older, as a wake-up call to go, look, this is what it's really like out there, But I've been really pleased by the response from Gen Z. It's a lot of them say, yes, you've accurately represented what it's like to be in our world, and thank you. A lot of them saying thank you for doing that, and thank you for getting our voice across too. What I find super interesting is when you show the film in a mixed group, with older and Gen Z there too. One of the great things is it's enabling a really important intergenerational conversation. So after the film, I've so many people who've come back to me and said, oh, after the film, I was having a chat with my daughter in the car and she was saying this and and they were able to have really amazing conversations because it just created that platform to do that. But what I find super interesting is at the end of a screening, the older generations are just like shocked and depressed. It's normally their reaction to the film. And the Gen Zers, they're not shocked and depressed at all. They're like, yeah, that's how it is, guys.
Essa foi Liz Smith conversando com a gente sobre Geração Z. Fique ligado que ainda tem muito mais debates, entrevistas e até mesmo um seminário aqui na Mostra Ecofalante 2022.